What would happen if a hotel cleaning girl turned out to be the one holding the key to changing the entire future of the tech industry? 6:30 a.m., and the marble hallway of the 32nd floor at the Royal Atlantic Hotel echoed with the soft roll of a cleaning cart. Lina Torres, dressed in a neatly pressed uniform, her hair tied back and her face carrying a blend of grace and fatigue, began her workday like any other. She drew no attention. None of the suit-clad men with leather briefcases walking past her that morning looked for more than 3 seconds. They strode quickly, speaking loudly, surrounded by the urgency of million-dollar meetings and global stakes. To them, Lina was part of the background, silent, efficient, and easily replaceable. But behind her calm brown eyes was something no one in the hotel could have guessed. 3 years ago, Lina had been a top student in applied linguistics, specializing in sign language interpretation. After an accident left her younger brother, Marco, deaf, she dedicated her youth to learning every gesture, every nuanced movement of the hands and eyes to become his bridge to the world. She once dreamed of becoming a professional interpreter or a lecturer helping the deaf community. But then her father went bankrupt, her mother fell ill, and tuition became a luxury she could no longer afford. Lina dropped out in her final year of college, packed her dreams into a small suitcase, and took a job cleaning hotel rooms just to survive. Each day, she scrubbed bathroom tiles, folded towels at precise 45-degree angles, and changed bed linens with the focus of a science experiment. And every afternoon, while her co-workers chatted or scrolled through their phones, Lina would quietly slip into a service hallway to face a silent TV screen in the lobby. CNN aired international news with the sound muted, and Lina would sign every word with her hands, as if a student stood before her. No one saw, no one knew. Only those hands, tirelessly dancing the language of a world that didn't care to look. Mrs. Hall, a long-time staff member at the hotel, once told her husband over dinner, "That girl wasn't born to scrub sinks. She's got something that can't stay hidden forever." But at the time, Lina herself believed her dream had already died. She had no idea that just a few floors above, someone else was also searching for purpose. And soon, fate would bring their paths together in a way neither of them could have ever imagined. Tuesday morning arrived with a chill in the air, the light wind brushing against the massive glass windows of the highest floor of the Royal Atlantic Hotel. Lina had just finished cleaning room 4211 when she received her next assignment. Room 4217, one of the VIP suites. She knocked 3 times as protocol dictated, got no response, then used her keycard to enter the room in near total silence. The suite was nearly untouched, except for a cold cup of coffee placed beside a closed laptop. But what truly made her stop was the sight through the large glass doors. Out on the balcony stood a man, his back to her, the early light casting his shadow long across the stone floor. His shoulders slumped forward, not with the stance of someone powerful, but of someone wrestling with himself. It was Damien Cole, the founder and CEO of NovaHear, the tech company that had shaken the hearing aid industry with the world's first low-cost AI-powered device. He had graced the covers of Time and Forbes, hailed as the sound genius. Yet all Lina saw was a man teetering on the edge of a world he had helped build. His hand moved slightly, as if trying to sign something. Not clear, not complete. But to Lina, the gesture was chillingly familiar. The sign for "Help me." Without thinking, without hesitation, she gently tapped on the glass. Damien turned, eyes wide with surprise. They stood there, separated by a thick pane of glass, a nameless housekeeper, and a multi-millionaire CEO. Then Lena raised her hand and slowly signed each movement. "Good morning. You are not alone." The expression on Damien's face shifted in an instant, from shock to recognition, then to the release of a heavy burden. Perhaps for the first time in months, he felt genuinely seen. He didn't say anything. He simply nodded, then quietly stepped back inside. Lena bowed her head slightly, offered a polite farewell, and left the room as if nothing had happened. But both she and Damien knew that something had been awakened. Not just a memory, but a thread, invisible and undeniable, tying together two worlds that were never meant to meet. 2 days later, while she was inventorying towels in the basement storage room, Lena was suddenly summoned. The message came from the housekeeping supervisor, whose voice was both hesitant and tense. "You need to go up to the 47th floor, right now." The 47th floor was the administrative level, where people in suits held meetings behind glass walls and never remembered the names of those who cleaned up after them. The housekeeping team fell silent. No one knew what was happening, but everyone assumed it was something bad. Lena tried to stay calm inside the elevator. Her heart pounded like the echo of high heels on marble, not because she feared losing her job, but because she couldn't understand why someone like her would be called to a place like that. When she stepped into the hallway on the 47th floor, she saw the nameplate. Damien Cole, CEO, Nova here. She knocked, and a warm, low voice from inside said, "Come in." Damien sat behind a large wooden desk, a 3D model of Nova Here's latest hearing aid displayed behind him. But his gaze wasn't distant. He recognized her, like someone who had been expecting her. "You're Lena Torres," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, that's me. The other day, on the balcony. You signed to me." Lena blushed, murmuring, "I'm sorry if I overstepped. I just thought you needed—" "Don't apologize," Damien interrupted gently. "How long have you known sign language?" "Since I was 18. My little brother lost his hearing in an accident. I learned so I could talk to him. And now you clean hotel rooms. Because my mom got sick, my dad lost his job, and I had to drop out of school. But I don't regret it." Damien nodded. He was silent for a moment, then spoke. "Nova here is developing an AI-based sign language recognition system. But our tech team is missing something crucial: real-world lived experience. I want to invite you to join us as an advisor." She gave a small, sad smile. "I'm just a housekeeper. I don't have a degree. I don't know how to code. I didn't graduate." Damien leaned forward. "You have something my engineers don't. Real experience. And empathy." She was silent. Her hands rested on her lap. Fingers that had once cracked from cleaning chemicals now trembled slightly. She had never imagined someone would see that in her. Not pity, but trust. That afternoon, in the supply room on the ground floor, the evening shift supervisor, Sylvia, came looking for Lena. Her face was as hard as a marble countertop, and her gaze cold like an airport security scanner. "I heard you got called up to meet one of the high-profile guests," Sylvia began with a casual tone. "Yes, it was Mr. Damien Cole. I also heard you were offered some sort of opportunity." She tilted her head, trying to appear gentle, but her eyes were full of control. Lena nodded slightly. "It was just an offer. I haven't made any decision." Sylvia sighed, then gave a faint, mocking smile. "Lena, I think you're a good person. hard-working. But there are some worlds that just aren't made for us. People like him, they make promises when they're in the mood, but then they disappear. Lena bit her lip, saying nothing. Sylvia continued, her voice lower now. I've seen it before. Someone thinks they've found a way to change their life, only to lose both the job they had and the dream that wasn't real. You should know where you belong. After Sylvia left, Lena stood in the hallway for a long time. The cold white neon light cast down on her hands. Hands that once danced in silence, now trembling with doubt. She had believed Damien's words, but now the cracks inside her began to widen. Did he truly need her, or was she just a fleeting whim of a lonely rich man? At that moment, Mrs. Helen, a retired former staff member who still visited often, quietly approached her. What did she say to you? Lena told her everything without holding back. Mrs. Helen wasn't surprised, only shook her head gently. People are often afraid of things they never had the courage to try. But you're different. You're not defined by the uniform you wear. Damien didn't call you in out of pity. He saw your real value. She took Lena's hand. The question isn't whether you're worthy. The question is whether you're brave enough to believe that you are. That evening, Lena sat alone at the small wooden table in her tiny kitchen, staring at her phone resting on top of a stiff business card with the name Damien Cole printed in crisp letters. She had dialed the number and hung up, then dialed again, and hung up. 3 times. Each time her finger hovered over the call button, her heart dropped into a void. Not because she feared being rejected, but because she feared being accepted. Across the table, her younger brother Marco was working on his math homework, observing her with a gaze more perceptive than most adults. You haven't called yet, have you? She looked up, forcing a smile. How do you know? Because you're biting your lip, and you always do that when you're nervous. She let out a soft laugh, then fell quiet for a moment. Someone offered me a role as a consultant for software that helps people who are deaf, but I didn't finish college. I don't have a degree. Marco set his pencil down and looked her straight in the eyes. Do you know what's more important than a degree? Living in the world of the deaf, like me. Knowing what we need, where we struggle, and how we communicate. No school can teach that better than the life you've lived. Lena stayed silent. For the first time, she heard herself spoken through someone else's words. I'm scared, she whispered. Scared I'm not good enough. Scared I'll fail. Scared that if I start to believe in this opportunity, I might lose it again. Marco reached across the table and held her hand with a steadiness beyond his years. You gave up your dream, so I could pursue mine. Maybe now it's time for both of us to move forward. She nodded gently. The fear was still there, but for the first time, it didn't control her. And when she hit call the 4th time, and Damien's voice answered on the other end, saying, I was hoping you'd call, she knew. She had just opened a door, not only for her career, but for the person she was always meant to be. The next day, Lena stood in front of Nova Here's temporary office, wearing a simple pearl-colored dress, her hair neatly tied up, a small notebook in her hand, and her heart beating as fast as the knock she was about to make. Damien opened the door with a smile that did not belong to a CEO handing out opportunities, but to a teammate welcoming someone truly essential. Welcome to organized chaos, he joked, gesturing toward whiteboards filled with sign language symbols, test-running software, and futuristic-looking hearing device prototypes. After a few minutes of introductions, Damien slid a tablet in front of her. This is our AI interface. Right now, it understands about 70% of standardized sign language movements. But when users sign quickly or use colloquial gestures, the accuracy drops dramatically. Lena observed for a few seconds, then subtly furrowed her brow. This software is mistaking confused for angry. They're similar, but if it cannot detect the user's emotion, that's a failure. She went on to point out every tiny mistake. The spacing between fingers, the angles the scanner failed to recognize, the regional gesture variations the AI could not yet process. Damien sat still, listening intently, nodding occasionally. "You know," he said, "a team of Stanford grads overlooked everything you just mentioned." Lena smiled softly. "Because they never lived with someone who is deaf. They learned sign language like it was a second language. I learned it to survive with my brother." For 2 hours, there were no roles of employee or boss. There were only two people, untying knots together to help the world hear better, with their eyes and with their hearts. On Monday morning, Lena was still wearing her hotel uniform, carrying a bucket and a cleaning cloth, just stepping out of the supply room when a familiar voice echoed from the hallway behind the elevator shaft. She froze, pressing herself against the wall. She had no intention of eavesdropping, but the words hit her chest like blows. "I honestly don't understand what you're thinking." Sylvia's voice rang out cold and sharp. "A girl who never finished college, no degree, not a single line of relevant experience on her resume, and you want her to advise on tech development?" Lena held her breath. Damien's reply came calm but firm. "I know exactly what I'm doing. The people with degrees you value so much have not identified 1/10 of the issues Lena spotted in her first few hours." Sylvia scoffed. "I'm not denying she has good observation skills, but technology doesn't run on feelings. It requires logic, process, and expertise. And that's exactly why we've failed," Damien said, his voice lowering. "Because we're building technology for the deaf without including anyone who actually knows what it feels like to live in silence." Lena didn't learn from books. She lives in that world every day. Stunned, Lena took a step back, but her shoe slipped slightly on the stone floor, making a faint sound. She knew she had been discovered. A moment later, Damien called out, "Lena, I know you're there. Come in." With no other choice, she stepped out from the corner, hands clenched together, head lowered. Sylvia shot her a glance, sharp as a blade. But Damien stepped forward, placed a hand gently on her shoulder and spoke softly. "What Sylvia just said isn't true. You're not out of place. You are exactly who we need." Lena whispered hesitantly, "I don't have a degree. I don't know how to code. I'm not good at speaking in front of people." "But you know how to listen. You know what it feels like to be misunderstood by a single gesture. And most of all, you see things that people with degrees can't." Damien paused, then looked her straight in the eye. "Nova here is opening a permanent office in this city. I want you to be our director of user experience. $90,000 a year, and the freedom to build in the way the world truly needs. From truth." She stood frozen, unable to believe her ears. No one had ever spoken her name alongside a management title. No one had ever believed the hand that once held a mop could now hold a pen to redraw the future. But today, it happened, and for the first time in her life, she did not feel afraid. On a warm spring afternoon, 6 months later, Lena Torres walked confidently through the halls of Nova Here's new office, no longer wearing the pale grey hotel uniform, but instead a sleek navy blue suit, white shirt cuffs neatly buttoned, and a nameplate on the glass door that read, Lina Torres, Director of User Experience. She no longer moved as if asking permission to exist in someone else's space. Now every step she took carried weight, confidence, and calm. In the large conference room that day, investors, engineers, and tech reporters had gathered early to witness the debut of the next-generation hearing device, developed under Lina's leadership. When the lights dimmed and the screen lit up, she stood before them without cue cards, without a teleprompter, holding only a remote and a video clip. She began, "Assistive technology is not just a solution, it must be a companion." The video played, showing her younger brother Marco using the new device to speak with their mother. No more vague looks, no more repeating himself, no need for an interpreter. He signed a joke, and the device not only translated it correctly, but also conveyed its humorous tone through a synthesized voice. Their mother laughed, tears streaming down her face. The entire room fell silent. "This technology doesn't just understand sign language," Lina said, her voice clear and full of emotion. "It understands people, emotions, and the context in which communication happens. It doesn't replace human interpreters. It builds a bridge between loved ones, between communities, between worlds that once felt far apart." When she finished speaking, the applause rose in waves. One investor stood and called out, "This is the most human presentation I've seen in my 20-year career." Lina bowed slightly in gratitude, but what moved her most was not the praise. It was seeing Marco sitting in the front row, nodding gently, his eyes glistening. The boy who once made her give up her dreams was now the reason she was reborn into them. 1 year later, at a workplace diversity conference held right inside the Royal Atlantic Hotel, Lina Torres returned. But this time, she was not pushing a cleaning cart, nor taking the service elevator. She appeared on the main stage, a discreet microphone clipped to her ear, standing before hundreds of attendees, from corporate executives and tech experts to custodial staff. Ms. Helen sat in the third row, proud as if watching her own granddaughter shine. Marco was there too, now a freshman studying communication technology. 18 months ago, Lina began. I was invisible in this hotel. I cleaned rooms no one remembered. I walked the halls and no one looked back. Not because I lacked ability, but because the job I held made people stop asking who I might be. She paused. Behind her, the screen projected an image of a perfectly folded towel placed on a bed, beside a name card with her name on it. The real question is not whether there's talent in places we rarely look, she continued. It's whether we are ready to see them. Whether we are willing to offer opportunity, not just based on degrees, but on lived experience, empathy, and quiet perseverance. When her speech ended, the entire room rose in applause. Her former supervisor, Sylvia, approached and spoke softly. I was wrong. I'm sorry I didn't believe in your ability. Lina looked at her, without anger or blame, and simply said, We've all believed in the wrong molds. What matters is whether we're willing to change our assumptions when we're given new truths. With a gentle smile, she stepped off the stage, no longer the woman who once cleaned the floors, but the one who is now reshaping how the world perceives true potential. She had learned one thing. Value doesn't come from a title or an expensive suit. It comes from daring to step forward when no one thinks you should. And when you dare to step out of the shadows, sometimes the world turns with you. In today's world of advanced technology, algorithms may be able to learn language, But only the human heart can teach empathy. True success does not lie in degrees or salaries, but in who dares to step out of the role imposed on them to affirm their true worth. If Lena's story makes you believe that every person holds the potential to be seen and heard, then like this video, subscribe to the channel so you won't miss more inspiring journeys, and leave a comment with the words, "Dare to step." Because sometimes one small step can open the door to an entirely new life.